Hello and welcome to Module 5. In this module, you are going to learn about functions. Functions are things that allow for larger code in your program to be run over and over again without you typing it in. To start off with in practice, you're going to learn about some built-in functions that Python has, and then you're also going to work and practice at building your own functions. So the way Module 5 looks is it's probably the longest module we've had so far, but I don't want this to intimidate you. It's broken up into smaller pieces, that way you don't have to scroll real long on one of the pages, and it allows you to take easier breaks without having to find where you are. So let's go ahead and we are going to start back at our main page and next through and see all of these. You're going to see that there's one assignment that is the sum from module 5.1 to 5.4. And then after that, you have another assignment here at 5.7. And then this last one is going to be circling back to this calculator program and updating it with some information that you learned along the way. So let's go up here and we'll practice our next. Here you can see all of your learning objectives for the module. Your learning resources are Canvas, and you do also need your textbook. Remember to create a Module 5 folder so you can stay nice and organized. Here is just the information page about what are functions, how do you use them, why do we have them, and then I also ask that you go and read a couple of portions of Chapter 4 in your textbook. You're going to learn that Chapter 4 is chock full of a ton of information, and we are going to use Chapter 4 for a good portion of the first half of the semester. So it's going to be in bits and pieces that you have to read through it. And again, unless I'm explicitly telling you, I don't expect that you will write out the code that's in your textbook. If I tell you to do the exercise associated with that particular chapter, then yes, I want you to write out the code that's in that PDF exercise. But when it's just the textbook, you can practice with some of the code if you like, but I don't expect that you're doing that. And then there's also a really nice resource on the Python website that does a nice job of explaining functions. So I want you to have practice at looking at those online resources, because after this class, maybe after you sell back your textbook, it's those online resources that you're going to have. And honestly, it's those online resources that are updated and kept most current. So it's good to know where they are and have them bookmarked for yourself. All right, after that, you're going to start just working with predefined functions. So Python has tons of predefined functions. We're going to practice a lot with input. You've already practiced with one called print, and we'll return to that concept here in a little bit too. So you're going to learn about the input function that allows a program to grab input from the user. You're going to have a nice little activity here about grabbing somebody types in after you ask them a question. After you do that short little activity, you're going to go on and learn about how do we get numbers from the user. So in that past activity, you learned how to grab text from someone. Well, how do you do this when you want to grab numbers that someone is typing in? So you're going to learn how to use that input function. You're also going to get your first formal introduction to an error message. Now, chances are you've already seen them along the way because you inadvertently typed something by accident, but this is purposeful. This is me forcing you to create an error so that we can talk through what all of these pieces of an error message mean. So make sure you work at deciphering this, and I tell you what these things all mean. But so if you get this, it's not a problem. You're supposed to get that error. We're going to talk about working with strings and numbers with that input function. Then we're going to just talk about how do we find all of the built-in functions within Python, and it's really going to do the documentation online. So here's where I want you to go there. I asked you to do it in another window so that you can look at the documentation for the input function that we've been working with. So you will be familiar with it, so then you can go see how Python talks about it, and you have a nice resource saved for all of those built-in functions that Python has. Next, you're going to build a program that is a little calculator. So you're just going to build a program that's going to ask a person for a series of numbers, ask them whether or not they want to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and then it's going to give them some options of what they can do. So you're going to write this nice little program that's going to go back and circle back to print statements, your if and elif statements, your assigning variables information, the use of input and how to get numbers from input and text from input. So it's going to be a nice summary code for you. When you see these types of code, I do expect that you just copy what's on screen onto your own personal idle window. I don't provide all the text because the copying and pasting of text from a web browser into idle will give you more error messages based upon how it spaces out all of your characters. Then you spend more time fixing it than you would just typing it in. And plus, typing it in is how your brain's going to connect what you're doing. So I give you the code that you need, but you just need to follow along and type it in on your own. You are going to turn in this calculator. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to do anything else other than just type in what you see on screen, and you'll get a nice 20 points for going through that. And then I'm going to ask you to build some of your own functions. We're going to walk through a nice little example about a dog show. So we're going to use that concept of this little dog show program that I gave you. So you're going to need to download this code and run it. That walks through grabbing input from the user using a function to return something back to the program. So that return concept is sometimes a little fuzzy for people to grab. So between the video, the code, and this graphic, I'm hoping that the concept of that return from a function makes sense to you. And again, there's some takeaways down here. You're going to build your own simple function. I call it the doubles program. If you've ever heard a little kid singing the song, doubles, doubles, I can add doubles. It's no trouble for me to add doubles. If you know that song, that's what this code is based upon. All right, after that, you're going to have an assignment where you're going to do some basic updating of your doubles game. Since you've worked hard to type it out, I'm going to have you turn in that doubles game. And this is one where you're going to also see that I want you to turn in a screenshot of your output. So like I mentioned before, a lot of times I'm going to ask you for your code and for your screenshot of the output. I want to see that you are able to successfully run your programs, and then also all of these programs that aren't tied to a particular file location on your computer, we will be running as well when we grade. So we're going to run them to make sure that the programs run for us, but I also want to see proof that you were running your program and you successfully were able to run it yourself. And then we're going to circle back to that calculator program. We're going to see how we can update that program to just make it shorter and make it a cleaner program. The experience for the user is going to be virtually the same, but the experience for the programmer and anyone who opens up and looks at your code is going to be much different, because it's going to be taking advantage of functions that can allow for the repetitiveness of that program to be captured in the functions. So you're going to walk through and update those according to these steps here. So follow along and get your code updated. And then you're going to, and that one actually had the assignment at the bottom. I apologize. So this one is one where the assignment to turn in your final code is at the bottom here of this assignment page. So make sure you get that done, and then you land on the fact that you're done. So the update of that calculator program is the last thing that you'll do for that module. So lots of good stuff in this module, lots of good programming to clean up your programs and just to understand functions. This will be the last time really that we build our own functions. Moving forward in the class, especially when we get to the ArcPy and the GIS portion, we are going to be using a lot of functions that are pre-built for us, and having knowledge of how those functions are created and the concept of a return value is just going to make your learning of ArcPy all that much easier. So as always, any questions, ask them, and best wishes.